Dear Mom, I'd been under a lot of stress at work, and I'd come into a windfall of cash. So I decided to take that Mexican vacation I'd been planning. Now, despite what people say, I had no trouble whatsoever getting across the border. Some nice people were there to greet me when I landed.
What's your name?
Moza.
The Gringo has been got. I guess.
Gringotts?
Has it?
Is this a Harry Potter thing?
No, it is not a Harry Potter. Ooh, it could have been, but no, I'm not that clever.
See, they actually got Mel Gibson and threw his ass in jail for his craziness. Finally, they found him. They actually found him in Mexico.
he had one rant too many. It's like, that's it. You're going to Mexican jail.
Yeah, I know. If your friends aren't going to help you, we are. All right, the federal government.
See, I thought Get the Gringo was a game people play when I get drunk and wander into certain parts of town.
Well, that too.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure.
Involves more tequila. This is more race baiting.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought there was a subtle difference.
But speaking of that, I mean, it seems obvious why, at this point, to me, why Mel Gibson would be sneaking his film through an indirect fashion to video
why's
on
that?
demand. He may have had some public problems that may have hurt his career to a certain extent.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I love this. This is about as indie as he can go. Where it's not just like he's paying for it, shooting it with some friends down in Mexico, and just like the dirtiest part ever.
It's actually directed by the first assistant director of Apocalypto. That's how many favors he had to call in to get this.
I'm actually shocked he did it. Just call the cartel and say, "Hey, man, can you guys distribute movies?" Because I kind of burned every fucking bridge I have except for you guys.
I mean, he must have. It's like, okay, it's one thing to like, hey, we're going to do it direct to video, or it's Redbox or Netflix. No, this is direct TV only. Like, but I ain't never heard of that where it's VOD, but only a certain cable provider, and that's it.
I feel like somebody got misinformed along the way. Like they thought it meant you could see it everywhere, but no, only for that 0.01% of people who actually own and use direct
They really
TV.
are hiding this movie in the smallest possible place.
It's the AOL.com of television at this point. But you know what?
They got a hold of whoever was hiding Osama, and then they were like,
All that being said, this is a Mel Gibson written movie, and as much as and starring, and as much as I really, went into this like, I would love it if this movie was absolute shit, so we could all just have a good laugh and say, ha ha, fuck you, Mel Gibson. It was actually a pretty fun little Mel Gibson movie.
Yeah, I know you walk in like, hopefully my moral high ground will be validated and this movie will be terrible, but unfortunately, Mel Gibson, say what you want about the guy, still knows how to make great movies. Like, it's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's not. And at the same time, I'm watching it because it's, Cyrus, you kept telling me how it's reminiscent of Payback. And I'm like, it is. But it is in that way where I kept going like, yeah, but I'd rather watch Payback. It's actually such a much better movie.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys were talking about Payback, I was expecting like a Payback type movie, but I was actually surprised how much it really wasn't so much Payback. I mean,
yeah.
And I say that because I thought it had a lot more interesting characters going around instead of just a streamlined revenge story, which this isn't.
No. In fact, when I said that, it wasn't as I guess I didn't make it clear. It's not like the movie Payback. It's like that they took that character from Payback and said, okay, this is something else that happens to him 10 years later.
It's funny because the character, he does start out feeling like Parker.
Yeah.
Or Porter.
I always say Parker, too.
Well, I mean, it's based on the character, the Parker character.
Yeah.
But it did have that feel in the beginning. But the longer it went on, the more it was like, well, he seems a lot less like Parker and just more his own guy.
Well, in the story here, because, you start off with him as a bad guy, he as a criminal. He's at the beginning of the movie. He's in this car wearing clown masks with this other anonymous dude who we never see, who is being chased by Mexican and American police on both sides of the wall. And
which I was shocked they actually built. I was like, did they actually build that fucking wall?
And then they flip a coin to figure out which side is going to have to deal with him once they catch him, which I thought was pretty funny. Because if that happened now, I'm pretty sure it was Mel Gibson, they would flip a coin to figure out who was going to have to deal with it.
This is going to be a pain in the ass for whoever gets it.
Exactly.
But Mexicans end up getting him, and he gets shipped off to the big, terrifying Mexican prison. No, I know nothing about the realities of Mexican prisons aside from what Leon's told me.
It ain't no joke. Let me tell you that. This movie makes it look like Disney World.
This is like the cross between the stories you hear and any given flea market that you've been to, pretty much.
Well, I love how it's almost like Arkham City, where it's a prison, but it's a whole city. So you just walk around with these other criminals in a walled off area. I mean, it's like you're just living in a dirty town, a little dirty border town. Except there's guards around making sure you can't leave.
I thought they described it perfectly. It's like the world's worst looking mall.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, it pretty much is that. Yeah, it's like, well, it reminds me of where I grew up.
And it's funny because you want to call bullshit on it, but then during the Q&A, Mel was talking about how like that's actually what that prison was like. And I don't know if he was on any mind-bending substances when he heard that, but from his description of it, it sounds like it was exactly like that before they shut it down.
Well, when you actually think about it, it makes a lot of sense. It's like, you know what? All prisons should really be like that.
Yeah.
Well, people would be less anxious to leave if there was actually stuff you could do and hookers and stuff.
I'd be begging to get in. Are you kidding me? There'd be no crime because I'm too busy trying to get in that goddamn prison.
What are people being arrested for there is the real question. If everything illegal is in the prison as well, just openly. But yeah, I mean, this falls its way into expected ground as he sort of decides. He's obviously kind of a badass, so he figures out how to worm his way through the system that exists, figuring out who's really in charge as we discover how high the corruption goes, of course, and how it all, in fact, leads back to something really big outside of the prison proper. Right. And along the way, he ends up teaming up with this little 10-year-old kid. I don't know. It was awkward, to say the least, because he keeps giving this kid cigarettes. I'm like, Mel, are you sure this is what you want to be doing at this point?
Well, I know. I mean, that was one of the things that was cool about it, that it was this place where a 10-year-old smokes. And even his mom said, don't give him cigarettes. But it's like, he's in prison. Who cares?
Got a cigarette?
Yeah.
Can I have one?
How old are you, kid?
18.
Get lost.
I'm 10. Can I have one now?
Nope.
You probably want me to keep my mouth shut. Well, Manuel's taco stand caught on fire. And Rodrigo, the doctor, seems to have some misplaced cash. If I talk, it's really gonna hit the fence.
Cigarette.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen babies smoking. I mean, it's like, that wasn't shocking. I'm like, the kid was born in a goddamn prison. This kid is going to be Bane at some point in his life.
Right.
So, let him smoke if he actually survives to make it to 12.
And it helps that the kid is the little deviant criminal kid from The Sitter. So it's like, oh, we've seen you do shit like this before.
Oh, that's true. But I don't know. I thought they actually had a pretty good chemistry together. There was so many more things in this film that I liked than I didn't. And I admit, I went into this, like I said before, looking for stuff to dislike, and it just bit by bit as it went along just kept making me like it more and more. And at the end I walked out going, I'm having trouble finding something negative to say about this.
Well, it's one of those movies that once it actually gets into the territory of a kid in peril type film, it gives you something to like about Mel Gibson's character. Right. And as easy as that is, I'm like, this is pretty fascinating, especially since at the beginning of the movie, you're just imagining that it's going to be Mel Gibson playing Arkham City. And you're just like, okay, how is he going to survive all this? But when they bring in the kid, I mean, and you see that gentler side of Mel Gibson that you will never see in real life, apparently. I mean, I guess it makes you go, he ain't all that bad.
That's the thing, is they make his character interesting enough that even he has those moments where he's like the money or the kid type of thing, and you're like, all right. It is a struggle for him. He's like, fuck, I can't. I hate this. Why do I have to be in this position? I chose this lifestyle because I'm a dick, and now I got to deal with this fucking moral shit.
I guess for me, what I found, what I would put in the negative column, because you guys are right about a lot of things you're saying, but for me, what goes into the negative column is that so much of it felt like pieces cobbled together from other Mel Gibson movies, all in this. I mean, it's like, the guy who's a hardened badass, but you know what? He's a scumbag, but he's still better than all the other scumbags, so you like him. Or a guy, he's tough as nails, but he's got a soft spot for a kid.
Yeah.
I just feel like, man, I've seen this so many times. And I understand, like, hey, look, this is a low-budget movie that the guy's just trying to put together. And sure, it's got that Mel Gibson charm. I mean, you watch, you go like, oh, yeah, this is the reason why we all used to like him.
Right.
And why his flip-outs have felt like such a betrayal.
Sure.
But you go like, yeah, he's not that guy. But when it comes time to become that movie star Mel Gibson, he's able to do it very easily.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I think
it's a switch he could just flip on and off. Yeah.
And it goes a step further, too. It's not just cobbling together Mel Gibson movies. It's cobbling together other people's movies. Like we mentioned, that it feels like Payback, story-wise and character-wise. But I think in terms of action aesthetics and energy, it feels like what Once Upon a Time in Mexico should have been.
Well,
Sure.
that much is true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or any Robert Rodriguez film. Yes.
The only thing I like in that movie is when Johnny Depp's got all the blood coming out of his eyes and trying to get in a gunfight. Like, that was it. And just for a split second.
But you have silly things like that happening in this movie where, like, people are throwing grenades and they're getting batted around like ping pong balls.
Well,
like,
there's a lot of classic Mel Gibson type moments, and you're right in the sense that they, you can't help but think of Riggs from Lethal Weapon
Yeah.
or other characters like Porter, because they're those little, like, where he's this total badass and he'll go and do something that's like, oh, that was so cool, and just walk away from it whistling, you know, while chaos erupts in the background.
Yeah.
Very classic Mel Gibson moments, but that's what we needed, or that's what he needed right now
Yeah.
in his career, is to remind everyone, hey, I can still make movies like this. I may be a douchebag, but you like me.
And because of that, I just felt this underlying sense of, even liking it, this underlying sense of it being very calculated. And that was taken away from me.
Well, despite it being calculated or not, which I see what you're saying, but the thing is that you can't deny that the guy knows how to write tense scenes where, there's a lot of moments in this movie where, I didn't want to turn away. I was like, it's one of those things where when I watch these straight to video, or straight, VOD type movies,
Yeah.
there's a lot of distractions, especially when a movie is just not interesting me.
Sure.
And with this, I was really just like, I was really tuned into what was going on, and when the moments of tension were set up, the execution was just great. Where I was like, wow, there is a part of this movie that makes me wish I could see a lot more, because I always feel like movies like this, I don't see enough of them to where the tension really builds up to where the climax is worth the payoff. And with this, it definitely seemed like kind of a throwback to the old traditional like action movies where you have like the central bad guys who are really fucking bad, where they're looking to do harm to a kid. They can give two shits about him, and you got a guy who is still that he's not a good guy. He's the anti-hero. And I think, that's kind of what makes this type of movie work, even though it's using those old traditions, but a movie like that always works for me, at least.
No, I agree with you. And I thought also it did this kind of neat thing where there was a point in the third act where you weren't sure where it was going, which is rare for these type of films. I was like, wow, what are they actually doing with the story? I wasn't confused. I was just, unclear. And then when it ends in this big, like, a pretty big action set piece at the end,
definitely.
when it's coming to the crisis point, which is what will Mel Gibson's conscience make him do, I was with it.
And I think co-hosts hit on it. Like, a lot of the tension comes from the fact that they made the kid not just like a supplementary character to kind of help his moral conundrum, but like a central figure in the plot, like something that was integral to, basically the final showdown. And it's like that, I think, worked in the film's advantage in the way that they play with that, and the fierceness of that kid's performance toward the end, I thought was great.
You know what, Coach, you bring up a good point, because there is that thing where we watch stuff on VOD. I am easily distracted, and this was one where I wasn't. I was into it the whole time, even when I was like not as keen on it as you guys. I still was very invested in the whole thing. I will say with the third act, it didn't feel unpredictable to me. And normally I'm the last one to figure out what's going on, but I was kind of like, it got to that point, and I kind of in my brain mapped what was going to happen, and it just kind of followed through on like, okay, that's pretty much how I figured this was going to go.
Can we all at least agree that Mel Gibson does the worst Clint Eastwood impression in the history of mankind?
What was that?
It sounded more like Ronald Reagan. Like he's like, well, this is my Clint Eastwood impression. And I'm like, that's Ronald Reagan, dude.
I thought I was missing a joke. I was like, wait, he's doing. Is that really supposed to be? Is he supposed to sound like someone else, and then it's fun?
And the guy on the other end just completely buys it. And I'm like,
Right.
really?
Yeah,
You know what,
That was
though?
one of those things. Like, this is plot contrivance because, like, somebody just call and say, like, "Hey, I'm Clint Eastwood. I want to meet with you." Oh, okay.
Well, you know what's funny is that while that scene was going on, while he was doing that impression, I was like, yeah, that's not so good. I can do a better one. And and I was like, wait, never mind. You know, he's actually pretty good.
Damn you, Gibson.
Yeah, I'm Clint Eastwood. Meet me at the parking lot behind the Denny's.
The only one of us who can probably do it is Brian, and I'm not going to ask him to. So,
It would wreck my throat at this point.
but I'm going to go ahead and go to the core review here. I think that there's so much good stuff about this movie, and in a lot of ways, if it was someone else making it, I'd be like, wow, what a shame they didn't get a theatrical release for this. But the fact is that, and we have to, and this is apart from my actual review, the guy still has not done anything to make up for his behavior as a human being at all. And I'm like, you know what? I'm watching you be punished by the system, and good. You still deserve to be punished, you little shit. But that being said, just judging this movie on its own merits, it is a damn good little movie. And if you get a chance to watch it, like online or something, you should. It's actually a full price movie, I think.
Which full price in this case is what, like $4.99? Like, oh wait,
I know.
plus your satellite contract, plus the install, plus the box.
$69.99.
$69.99. I may wait for rental on that just based on the fact that otherwise it's going to cost me $70.
Just think of it as a star system. That's a 4-star rating out of 5. Just think of it that way.
You know what? You bring up a good point. If it had been somebody else making this movie, and I don't mean so much me judging Mel Gibson on his moral character, because the world's doing that. There's enough people doing it, and I know anybody listening to this, they're like, I don't care what you think about him. What do you think about this movie? But I will say, like, somebody, just any, like some low level guy coming up trying to make a movie like this, maybe even the Duplass brothers that you barely know, making a movie like this, I go like, hey, what a great achievement. Good for you. Somebody of his stature making a movie like this, I'm like, well, it's not like it's a bad story or anything, but I expect better from somebody of your caliber. I mean, I guess you're working with the best you can. It is enjoyable, but yeah, I never thought full price while I was watching it. I know it'll be on DVD soon, so I would, not only just rent it. You might want to buy it because it has enough stuff to make you want to watch it again. If it was like a theatrical release, it would be a matinee for me, maybe even a low matinee.
Okay.
So you are giving it a matinee,
Yes.
regardless of if you rented it and if it was on sale. And
Well, we're thinking, like I said,
bought it.
star rating.
This is a tough one
It's
to
hard
do.
to rate something like this.
Yeah.
If Walmart had it on sale, should I get?
If Walmart had it on sale for $5, I would buy it.
If you can stream it to your Roku, then yes.
But if I had to pay $6.99, I might go,
Maybe not. That 99 cents right there. Just
The
hanging in
ironic thing
hanging
is
in the
none of
balance.
us pay anything for movies. So,
That's a very straw man argument.
what about you, Brian?
No, I think Leon's exactly right. I think it's one of those movies that you want to pay to see, like it's good enough to pay to see, but the way they're releasing it makes that so difficult that I guess I would give it a rental,
Yeah.
but I don't know how you could really rent it. So maybe buy and rental in this case should kind of be in the same category.
Well, once again, thinking of this on a star rating scale.
Oh, a
star
in
rating.
a literal
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would give it a solid 3 out of 5 stars.
Okay, so a matinee.
So that would be
Yeah.
your matinee.
Yeah.
For you?
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys have got it down to a science. I like that.
Well, you know what? That's a good point. I mean, there were points in the movie that I was watching where I was like, there's some of it after seeing the whole thing, I was like, yeah, there's a few scenes that I thought they could have done without. But the thing is that it did hold my interest. I really dug the bad guys. I actually liked the kid. The kid for once didn't annoy the shit out of me.
Sure.
This is true.
And I imagine anyone working with Mel Gibson, I mean, kudos to you, especially if it's a little kid. Like I can only imagine the kid that doesn't fucking get his lines right working with Mel Gibson, what he would do.
Yeah, it's tough for a
how he
10-year-old to
would
be called
unleash-
sugar tits, but
Yeah.
I guess it does happen.
or dirty Jew or whatever. But, yeah, but I mean, it really did kind of take me back to the kind of cinema cinema I've been missing for a while, especially since it's something that a lot of people just aren't gonna see. I mean, I really think this is gonna fly under a whole lot of people's radar, and some people aren't gonna give a shit because it's Mel Gibson and he's the fucking crazy guy now, and that's kind of sad because when I look at Mel Gibson, I'm like, man, that guy, he seems like a guy who really needs a fucking friend to get him in some kind of clinic to say, hey, stop drinking, all right, and yeah, take care of your daddy issues too. But other than that, I mean, as far as just the film it is, I want to say it was a matinee for me. It was a definite strong matinee. I was almost on the line of full price, but there are a lot of things that did make me go, if they trimmed it down a bit, it would have been a solid flick and a really good Mel Gibson flick. But I think the thing is too is that there's times when I see Mel Gibson interacting with a kid, I keep thinking about the feral kid from The Road Warrior, which is my all-time favorite movie. So that moment in that movie when I'm watching Mel Gibson decide to give that cigarette to that kid, I just was expecting that kid to go.
So in other words, you have to ask yourself overall with this film, were you gravely disappointed or not?
Where's your razor boomerang? That would fix everything.
Pretend cigarette is a boomerang. I think ultimately the movie, for better and worse, it reminded me of the movies. That flood of movies that came out after Pulp Fiction, when every studio was like, "We got to release a crime film," and some of them,
were really good.
Yeah, and some of them were just like, "Wow, you just want."
Well, those felt contrived. I can honestly say this didn't. So
this felt more like a sort of a nod to classic Mel Gibson films, and that didn't really feel like a ripoff because it's Mel Gibson.
I think the next one he does is going to revert so far back that he's going to get his Australian accent back.
Right? I wish he would.
2 days ago, I saw a rig that could hold that tiger. You want to get out of here? Talk to me. It's like, really? Where'd you get your accent back?
So,
is he going to have to use smoke signals to let us know when the release date is for that movie?
I know, right? He's just selling them out the back of his truck.
And you're not going to leave me like this, are you?
Well, Mom, I can't wait to get back. Who am I kidding? I'm not coming back.
Gringo.
Get the Gringo.